Today we are going to look at 3 more composition pointers to add to our list from earlier, the 5 that we had previously. Number 1 is the easy one. Don't overload the topic sentence, or any sentence really. You don't want to have too many key terms in any one sentence because that's going to overwhelm your reader who is not aware yet of what it is you're going to be arguing. So let's take a look at this sentence here. Unferth plays the role of the socially inferior antagonist. That's a really good phrase. I've got my character identified. I have a verb that isn't just is, but a strong active verb. And then I have a nice key phrase over here, socially inferior antagonist. That's a key term that needs development. Before you move on to more stuff, you have to first explain to your reader what you mean by socially inferior antagonist. And you do that by going to the text, finding some evidence, interpreting it, and repeating this key term. This next part is also a good sentence. Beowulf's response sets him up as the self-aware hero. That's really good. Here's another character. I have another verb that isn't just a simple is, and I have another great key phrase. But it's not the same thing as this one. In fact, it's dealing with a completely different character and completely different qualities. So I can't just jam them together in a single sentence. The reader is not going to remember anything about this by the time she gets overwhelmed with this. And then not only do I have this new phrase, I have now a which clause, which is giving me even more information, which is key to the epic cycle of the hero. That's another good phrase. It's the conclusion that the writer is drawing from this claim about the self-aware hero. All 3 of these clauses are really useful, but they can't all be jammed together in a single sentence. And then the writer says, well, let me go back and do number 1 again. Don't do it that way. Make one sentence at a time, develop one thing at a time, and then move on to the second paragraph, which would be the thing about Beowulf. And then once you're done with showing how Beowulf is a self-aware hero, make another paragraph, which then tells the reader why that would be important. Key to the epic cycle of the hero. So really, ultimately, you just want to do one thing at a time, quoting and explaining your key terms one little bit at a time instead of jamming them all together into one sentence. Second one, don't follow the quotation with a phrase that uses a verb in ing. Later, we're going to talk about why grammatically that's a problem, but for right now, let's just stick with not doing it. A verb in ing could be a verb, but it could also be an adjective, which is usually what happens when people misuse it. So let's take a look at this sentence. Unferth's attacks on Beowulf's reputation involve words only. That's good. It's a fact of the text, but the reader is going to say to you, well, I know that, but which words does he use and why are those important? So here is our claim that we're going to develop in the body sentences of the paragraph. What you don't want to do is to jam on to the end a phrase with a verb in the ing that tells us the conclusion you're drawing from that. So here's the fact of the text. Then you're drawing the conclusion that because they involve words only, that makes Unferth not the villain. That's a good idea, but you have to argue it. Doing it this way, where you take an ing verb and stick it onto the end, is short-circuiting all of the sentences that are going to be the explanation of how you got from this to this. So instead, what we want to do is put a period here. Then the next sentences are going to be evidence of the kinds of words Unferth uses and your explanation of why those specific words are relevant to his role. Then after you get all that done, then you can get to drawing your conclusion. Based on all of that stuff that you just analyzed in your body sentences, you want to say, Unferth is not the villain. So what we're trying to do is not do 2 things at once. First, here's your claim, develop it using CDs and repetitions of your key terms, and once that's all done, you can then draw the conclusion that you want to get to. Don't just jam that conclusion onto the end of another sentence with a verb in the ing. So here's another one that's has the same problem. Good claim. Hrothgar was once a competent leader. After Grendel attacks, he's stunned and bewildered. That's pretty good. And the reader says, great, now tell me the significance of the words you're making me look at. And you say, I don't want to do that. I just want to rush ahead and I want to draw the conclusion from those words, fulfilling the first requirement of the cycle of the hero. It's not that this part here is wrong. It's not wrong. That is what's happening. But what this writer is doing is rushing past any analysis of the words that are being quoted here, and even, we might say, some evidence about this competent leader stuff, jumping right to the conclusion you want me to draw. You can get to this part, the fulfilling the first requirements of the cycle, after you give me some explanation of this word and this word, why particularly those words, how did they injure Hrothgar's reputation as a hero. Once you do that, then you can get to drawing a conclusion about the cycle of the hero. So once again, it's one thing at a time. Don't cram everything together in a single sentence. All right, and then we look at our last rule, which is a little bit harder. Don't follow because with a simple fact of the text. Because is a difficult word, because it involves really complex thinking. Little kids don't use this word much. They just use and the reason behind that is their little brains can't really see how cause makes effect. What we want to do with because in sentences about literature is really think about what the word means. If you've got a clause on this side, Wiglaf adopts the role of the final hero of the cycle. Good claim, good idea, got some good key words, and then you put the word because in there. The stuff that follows because had better be the exact proximate cause of this thing over here. Well, that's not going to happen because this is a very big claim. This is a theme that you want to argue. A simple fact of the text, like he fights with Beowulf to defeat the dragon, is not going to be the cause of this whole big giant idea. So really, just like the other two, this is another example of rushing ahead. Here's a very good statement of a very big idea. You're not going to be able to get to the cause by using one little fact of the text. So if that's not really making sense to you, don't worry about it. It's a very complex idea. Just start using this rule. No matter what you write, if you're going to write the word because, don't follow it with a simple fact of the text. Here's a revision of the sentence here that uses because and really doesn't change the meaning of the sentence at all, but it's using because correctly because it's adding something else in. Because Wiglaf agrees to fight with Beowulf while the other Geats run away, he would seem to be a good candidate for this next hero. What's different about this sentence from this one is this bit about while the other Geats run away. So I'm not just, in fact, giving my reader a fact that happens. I'm actually contrasting this bit here, Wiglaf agrees to fight with Beowulf, with some other thing in the story that happens that makes Wiglaf look better. My reader now is going to say to me, okay, this seems, because this thing happened, this conflict between Wiglaf and the other Geats, you're now arguing that he's a good candidate for the next hero. Explain how that works to me. So the difference might seem on the surface to be kind of small. All I've done is add in another fact of the text. But what I've really done is characterize Wiglaf as a different kind of hero. And now I really do have a cause of why he might be a good candidate. So again, if the difference between these two is still kind of subtle and you're not really seeing it, don't worry. It takes some practice to get used to how to use because. What you can do, though, is train yourself not to do this. Whatever you do, if you're going to use because, don't let this thing be the thing that follows the word because. Okay, now you're going to go to Schoology. You're going to find the document in composition notes that's entitled 3 More Composition Pointers. And all you have to do is review it for our next class's discussion. There's nothing that you have to hand in. I'm not going to collect it. I'm not going to somehow check that you personally did it. But this is what honors students do at an honors level. You're spending time, investing your quality time with composition principles, learning them so that you can more easily incorporate them into your writing, and we don't have to keep going back over the same stuff over and over and over again. So maybe spend more than one sitting with the document, 3 composition pointers, and be ready to discuss it when I see you, our class after the Anglo-Saxon assessment.